You tore my dress, don't. After the rancher did that, he regretted it. The early morning air carried the crisp scent of earth and grass, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, announcing the start of another day. The ranch was a sprawling piece of land, with rolling hills that stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with grazing cattle and winding dirt paths. The wooden fences, weathered from years under the sun, marked boundaries, and a small barn stood proudly in the center, filled with tools and memories of 100 days like this one. John, the rancher, moved slowly across the yard, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. He was a man shaped by years of hard work. His hands were rough and calloused, a testament to the life he had built for himself and his family. He had inherited the ranch from his father, who had taught him everything about raising cattle, tending to the land, and facing challenges with patience. Life on the ranch was not easy. Every day brought its share of struggles, from unpredictable weather to stubborn animals, but John took pride in what he had built. This was his life, his world, and he knew every corner of it like the back of his hand. This morning, however, there was a sense of anticipation in the air, a small ripple that disturbed the usual calm of the ranch. John had been expecting a visitor. Her name was Emily, a young woman from the nearby town. She was coming to help with some tasks around the ranch for a few days, and while she had visited before, John didn't know her well. He had heard from his sister that she was kind and hardworking, but she was also lively, with a curious spirit that sometimes got her into trouble. As he wiped the sweat from his forehead and adjusted his hat, John could see her approaching from the winding dirt road. Emily was carrying a small bag with essentials, and her dress fluttered lightly in the breeze. She moved with a natural grace, her eyes wide with curiosity as she looked around at the ranch. It was clear she had not grown up here, and everything seemed new and exciting to her. "Morning, John," she called out cheerfully as she reached the gate. "Morning, Emily," John replied, trying to keep his tone friendly but neutral. He wasn't used to having visitors around, especially young women. There was a part of him that wanted to be welcoming, but another part felt awkward and unsure of how to act. Emily smiled, and there was a moment of silence as they both took in the beauty of the morning. The sunlight made the dew on the grass sparkle like tiny diamonds, and the air smelled fresh, almost sweet. Birds sang from the trees at the edge of the field, adding music to the quiet. "I can't believe how beautiful it is here," Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's nothing like the town. Everything is so open and quiet." John nodded. "It's peaceful, yes. But it's also a lot of work. There's no stopping once the day begins. Every animal, every field, it all needs attention." He paused, then added, "But if you're ready for it, it can be rewarding too." Emily laughed softly. "I think I'm ready. I like learning new things, and I've never done ranch work before. I think it will be fun, though maybe a little tiring." John watched her for a moment, noticing her enthusiasm. It was refreshing, yet a little unnerving. He had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the ranch, the predictability of his life, and the idea of having someone around who was full of energy was a small but significant change. "Let me show you around," he said finally. "You should know where everything is before we start working. You don't want to get lost out here." Emily's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." They walked together toward the barn, the sound of their boots crunching on the gravel echoing softly. John pointed out the various tools, the stable where the horses were kept, and the pens where the cattle were fed. Emily listened attentively, asking questions and occasionally reaching out to touch something or examine it closely. John noticed how her hands moved with curiosity, how she seemed eager to understand everything. After a while, they reached the open field where the cattle grazed. The sun had risen higher now, bathing the land in bright light. Emily stopped and looked around, taking in the sight of the animals moving slowly across the field, the hills rolling endlessly behind them. "It's amazing," she said softly. "You have so much space here, it feels like freedom." John smiled, though it was tinged with a little worry. "It does feel that way, but it comes with responsibility. These animals depend on us, and the land does too. It's not just pretty scenery." Emily nodded seriously, showing that she understood, even if she didn't fully grasp the weight of it yet. As they continued walking, John noticed how careful she was, making sure not to step too close to the animals or touch anything she wasn't supposed to. There was a natural respect in her demeanor, something that made him trust her instinctively. He felt a small sense of relief. Maybe this visit would go smoothly after all. They spent the morning together, tending to minor chores, checking fences, refilling water troughs, and gathering a few supplies. John explained each task patiently, showing Emily the proper way to do things. She listened intently, following his instructions, and even when she made small mistakes, she laughed them off instead of becoming discouraged. John found himself smiling more than he had in days. As they worked, the ranch began to feel alive in a new way. The sun climbed higher, and the warmth of the day seeped into their skin. Birds flew overhead, and the occasional lowing of a cow punctuated the quiet. Emily's laughter mingled with the sounds of the ranch, creating a lightness that John hadn't realized he had missed. Around midday, they paused to rest under a large oak tree near the barn. Emily sat on a wooden fence rail, brushing grass from her dress, while John leaned against the trunk, catching his breath. There was a comfortable silence between them, one that came from sharing work and the simplicity of being present in the moment. "You know," Emily said after a while, "I think I could get used to this life. There's something honest about it, something real. It's different from the town. People are always in a rush there, always looking for something more. Here it feels like you can just exist, you know?" John nodded slowly, feeling the truth in her words. "Yes, it's honest. It's hard, but it's honest. You learn quickly that everything has its place and that every action matters." Emily smiled, then paused, looking down at her hands. "I hope I can be helpful while I'm here. I don't want to get in the way or make things harder for you." "You're not in the way," John said firmly. "It helps to have an extra pair of hands, especially someone willing to learn. Just be careful and pay attention. That's all I ask." Emily laughed softly. "I will, I promise." For a while they sat in silence, watching the cattle move slowly across the fields, the wind rustling through the grass. There was a sense of peace in that moment, a feeling that nothing could disturb the calm of the morning. But as the sun continued its climb into the sky, there was a subtle tension that began to build. John noticed it first, a small unease that crept into his chest. It wasn't anything obvious, just a faint awareness that life on the ranch was unpredictable and that even small mistakes could have consequences. Emily, absorbed in her thoughts, didn't notice it yet. John shook his head slightly, trying to dismiss the feeling. It had been a long time since he had someone new around, and perhaps his mind was just adjusting to the presence of another person. After all, he had managed the ranch alone for years, and now there was someone else to consider. As they prepared to continue their work, John instructed Emily to follow him carefully. "We'll check the far end of the field next. There are some fences that need repairing," he said. Emily nodded eagerly, adjusting her bag and straightening her dress. She followed John, stepping lightly over the uneven ground. Her curiosity and energy were infectious, and for a moment, John felt a strange mixture of admiration and caution. He wanted to guide her, to protect her, but he also felt the pressure of responsibility weighing heavily. Little did either of them know that this calm, golden morning, filled with laughter and learning, was about to change in a way neither could have anticipated. A single, small mistake, an impulsive action, would soon shatter the quiet rhythm of the ranch and introduce a lesson in boundaries, respect, and the complexity of human interactions. For now, though, the world was bathed in sunlight. The ranch stretched endlessly around them, alive with possibilities, work, and the promise of discovery. Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement, and John felt a cautious optimism. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this new presence, this young woman on his land, was something he had not expected. And so, with the sound of distant cattle and the whisper of the wind through the grass, they moved forward together, unaware that a moment, seemingly small and innocent, would soon test their patience, understanding, and trust in ways neither could predict. The morning held promise, but also the quiet tension of what was to come. The morning had been calm and productive, and for a while everything seemed to go smoothly. Emily had been careful as she followed John across the ranch, helping with small tasks, observing how he moved, and asking questions about the animals and equipment. She seemed genuinely interested, and John had begun to feel a sense of ease around her. The sun climbed higher in the sky, making the fields glisten with heat. The cattle moved slowly under the bright light, some grazing, others lying down in shaded patches, their occasional lowing blending into the quiet hum of the ranch. John led Emily toward the far side of the property, where the fencing had weakened over time. The posts were weathered, and a few wires had snapped loose, making it a priority to repair them before any of the cattle wandered too far. "Here we are," John said, stopping at the first broken section. "See these posts? They've loosened over the years and the wire has started to sag. We need to fix them before any of the cows get through." Emily nodded seriously. "Okay, I'll follow your instructions carefully." John handed her a pair of work gloves and a hammer. "You hold the wire steady while I secure the post. Don't pull too hard, just steady it so it doesn't move while I work." Emily took a deep breath, gripping the wire with both hands. Her fingers were delicate compared to the roughness of the ranch tools, but she was determined to do her part correctly. John adjusted the post, positioning it firmly in the ground, and started to hammer in the nails. The sound of metal striking wood echoed through the field, accompanied by the low murmurs of the cattle. For a while, everything went smoothly. Emily balanced the wire carefully, trying not to let it slip, and John worked efficiently, securing the post. They exchanged a few words here and there, mostly about the technique, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. They were a team, focused on the task at hand. Then, as John moved to secure the next post, a sudden distraction changed everything. One of the cows, startled by a bird that had swooped too close, bolted in the wrong direction. The wire Emily was holding jerked violently, pulling her off balance. She stumbled backward, flailing her arms to regain her footing. John reacted instantly. Without thinking, he reached out to grab her arm and steady her. In the process, his hand caught the edge of her dress. The fabric tore slightly as his fingers brushed across it, and Emily let out a startled yelp. "You tore my dress, don't!" she exclaimed, stepping back quickly. Her eyes were wide with shock and anger, and for a moment she froze in disbelief. John's heart sank. He hadn't meant to touch her dress, let alone tear it. His hand had only gone out instinctively to prevent her from falling, but now he could see the small rip in the fabric, and he felt a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. I didn't mean to," he said quickly, stepping back to give her space. "I was just trying to keep you from falling." "I didn't," Emily shook her head, her voice trembling slightly. "I know, but still, you tore my dress. You shouldn't have grabbed it." John ran a hand over his face, frustrated with himself. He had spent years managing unpredictable situations with animals, fences, and weather, but he had never felt this kind of helplessness in handling a person's reaction. He wanted to explain, to make it right, but the words seemed to get stuck in his throat. The ranch, once calm and sunlit, now felt heavy with tension. The wind had picked up slightly, rustling through the tall grass, but it did nothing to ease the awkwardness between them. Emily crossed her arms, her body stiff, and John felt a rising sense of urgency to fix what had just happened. "I'm sorry," he said again, more firmly this time. "I didn't mean to. I was only trying to help." Emily's eyes softened slightly, but she still looked frustrated. "I know you didn't mean it, but it's not just about the dress. You shouldn't touch me like that without asking. I need to feel safe, too." John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. He had acted impulsively, and even though it had been a small, accidental gesture, it had crossed a boundary. The realization hit him hard. He had grown up on a ranch, surrounded by animals and hard work, but dealing with delicate human emotions was something he was still learning. "I understand," he said quietly. I'll be more careful, I promise." Emily relaxed slightly but didn't smile. There was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself, a reminder that she was not just a visitor, but a person with her own sense of respect and boundaries. John respected that, even as he felt the sting of guilt. For a moment they both stood in silence, the tension between them thick but slowly easing. The cow that had caused the initial disturbance had wandered back to the group, grazing peacefully as if nothing had happened. The wind carried the faint scent of earth and hay, but it couldn't sweep away the feeling of discomfort that lingered. John decided they needed to continue working, but carefully this time. He motioned toward the next section of the fence. "Let's try again," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I'll handle the heavy parts. You just hold the wire where it's safe." Emily nodded, her hands still gripping the gloves tightly. She moved cautiously, making sure to keep her distance. John noticed how careful she was now, how every movement was measured. He felt a pang of regret for having caused her distress and resolved silently to be more mindful. As they worked together, John tried to break the tension with small talk, asking about Emily's life in town, her experiences, and what had brought her to the ranch. She answered politely, but the conversation was stilted at first, both of them aware of the incident and its effect on their dynamic. "Do you often come to ranches?" John asked, trying to sound casual. Emily shook her head. "Not really. I've been to a few for school trips, but never to help with work like this. It's different. It's more hands-on than I imagined." John smiled faintly. "It's not easy. You have to pay attention to everything, animals, weather, fences, tools. One small mistake can cause trouble." Emily glanced at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I can see that now. I didn't realize how much goes into it. It's impressive." John felt a flicker of warmth at her words, but he quickly pushed it aside, focusing on the task. There was no room for distractions when repairing fences and managing cattle, especially after what had just happened. As they moved along the field, John remained vigilant, making sure his hands never came close to Emily's again unless necessary. Emily, for her part, stayed alert, careful with each step and gesture. The earlier incident had created a boundary, a line that both were careful not to cross again. Even with the tension, there was a strange sense of teamwork that emerged. They learned to communicate with small signals and nods, coordinating their movements without touching or stepping on each other's space. It was a delicate dance, balancing caution with efficiency, and both of them felt the subtle relief of cooperation. The sun climbed higher and sweat began to bead on John's forehead. He wiped it with the back of his hand, glancing at Emily. She too was working hard, her dress now slightly wrinkled from movement, but her determination was evident. Despite the mishap, she was not giving up. That impressed John more than anything. By midday, they had repaired most of the damaged sections of the fence. The tension had eased slightly, replaced by a cautious camaraderie. Emily even managed a small smile when John complimented her careful handling of the wire. "You're doing well," he said, trying to sound encouraging. "See, you've got the hang of it." Emily laughed softly, the sound light and freeing. "Thanks, I guess I'm learning fast, though I hope I don't make any more mistakes." John shook his head, smiling faintly. "Mistakes happen. What matters is that you keep trying and pay attention. That's all anyone can ask." For a moment, the air seemed lighter again. The earlier incident still lingered, but it no longer felt like a shadow over the entire morning. Both John and Emily had learned something from it: the importance of awareness, boundaries, and careful communication. As they stood back to admire their work, the repaired fence stretching neatly across the field, John felt a small sense of accomplishment. The land was secure again, the cattle safe, and despite the incident, the morning had not been a failure. Emily's determination and willingness to learn had made the work easier and even more meaningful. And yet, John knew that the tear in her dress was not something that could be ignored. He would need to find a way to repair it, not just physically, but also the trust that had been momentarily shaken. That thought weighed on him as they walked back toward the barn, each step deliberate and careful. The morning had started with sunshine and calm, but it had also revealed the unpredictability of human interaction. Even the most careful intentions could lead to mistakes, and even the smallest gesture could have consequences. John felt the lesson deeply, understanding that life on the ranch was not just about fences and cattle. It was also about respect, understanding, and responsibility toward others. The afternoon sun had climbed high over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields and turning. The air warm and heavy. The earlier incident with Emily's dress continued to weigh on John's mind. Even though the immediate tension had eased, he could not shake the feeling of unease that settled in his chest. The incident was small in the grand scheme of ranch life: a torn dress, a startled visitor. But for John, it carried an unexpected weight, a reminder of how quickly a simple action could lead to consequences he hadn't intended. John walked slowly toward the barn, his steps heavy with thought. The repaired fence looked strong and secure, yet it did little to repair the worry gnawing at him. He remembered Emily's words clearly. "I need to feel safe too." They echoed in his mind, more potent than any call from the animals or the sun on his face. He realized that the accident had highlighted a part of himself he wasn't proud of: his impulsiveness. On the ranch, instincts and quick reactions were often necessary, but when it came to dealing with another person, instincts alone could be dangerous. He paused near the barn, leaning against the weathered wood. His hands, so used to mending fences and tending to animals, felt awkward and restless. He thought back to the moment he grabbed Emily's arm to steady her. It had been instinctive, automatic, a reflex, but the result had been a tear in her dress and a spark of fear in her eyes. That fear, however fleeting, weighed on him more than any fence he had ever repaired. John recalled his upbringing on the ranch, how he had been taught to act quickly to solve problems, to react before situations got out of control. That approach had served him well for years with animals, crops, and machinery, but people were not animals. They had feelings, boundaries, and expectations that required more than instinct. He had learned a harsh lesson that morning. Even a well-intentioned act could hurt someone if he did not consider their perspective. Emily's face appeared in his mind, her eyes wide with shock, her hands clutching at her dress. He could almost hear the echo of her voice. "You tore my dress, don't!" The memory made him wince. He had wanted to apologize immediately, but words felt insufficient. How could he explain an instinctive action without it sounding like an excuse? How could he convey regret without deepening the tension? He knew he needed to act, to show that he understood the seriousness of the moment. But he also feared overstepping again, making things worse. The delicate balance between apology and respect weighed on him. He remembered the small smile she had given later, the cautious camaraderie as they finished the fence. That smile had been fleeting, but it had reassured him slightly. He knew she had recognized his good intentions, yet he could not ignore the importance of making amends properly. John spent the next hour in quiet reflection, moving slowly among the tools in the barn. The smell of hay and wood shavings filled the air, familiar and comforting, yet his mind was restless. He considered the best way to approach Emily. A sincere apology seemed obvious, but he also wanted to repair the physical damage, the tear in her dress. It was a symbol of the incident, a tangible reminder of what had happened. Repairing it would not erase the event, but it could show that he was serious about making things right. He thought about his father, who had always emphasized responsibility. On the ranch, every action had a consequence, and it was important to address mistakes rather than ignore them. That lesson was now more personal than ever. This was no longer about fences or animals, it was about a person's trust and feelings. And John felt that trust had been shaken. As he worked quietly, John also reflected on Emily herself. She had shown patience, even after being startled and upset. Her cautious demeanor had not turned into anger, but it had been a gentle reminder of boundaries and respect. He admired her ability to remain composed, her willingness to continue helping despite the mishap. It was a testament to her character, and it made him even more determined to handle the situation carefully. John's mind wandered to possible ways to make amends. He considered offering to take her into town to buy a new dress, but that seemed inadequate. He could simply sew the tear himself, but he was aware that physical repair alone could not fix the emotional impact. What mattered most was understanding her perspective and showing genuine regret. He needed to communicate that he valued her comfort and trust more than the outcome of his impulsive reaction. With renewed determination, John decided to wait for a calm moment when they were both free from work. He did not want to force an apology immediately, fearing that doing so while either of them was distracted or tired might come across as insincere. He resolved to speak from the heart, quietly and honestly, acknowledging both the mistake and the lesson he had learned. Later in the afternoon, John found a quiet moment while Emily rested in the shade near the barn. The sun was lower now, painting the fields in warm, golden light, and the breeze carried a soft, comforting chill. He approached her slowly, hands empty and open, signaling that he came without expectation or defensiveness. "Emily," he began, his voice calm but serious. "I want to talk about what happened this morning." Emily looked up at him, her expression cautious but attentive. She nodded slightly, signaling that he could continue. John took a deep breath. "I didn't mean to grab your dress, and I certainly didn't want to startle you. I was only trying to keep you from falling, but I realize now that I acted without thinking. That was wrong. I understand that my actions affected your sense of safety, and I am truly sorry for that." Emily listened quietly, her eyes fixed on his. She could see the sincerity in his face, the genuine regret in his tone. There was no attempt to excuse the action. He simply acknowledged it and took responsibility. That alone made a difference in her perception of him. "I appreciate your apology," she said softly, still cautious. "I know you didn't mean harm, but it's important that I feel safe and that boundaries are respected. It's not just about the dress. It's about knowing that I can trust you to act carefully around me." John nodded solemnly. I understand, and I will be more mindful from now on. I promise to respect your space and your feelings. There was a pause, a quiet moment where the sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle, the rustle of the wind through the grass, filled the air between them. It was a reflective silence, neither awkward nor tense, but thoughtful and heavy with understanding. Then John spoke again, his tone gentle but firm. I also want to make it right in a practical way. I can repair your dress if you like, not just to fix the fabric, but to show that I take responsibility for what happened. I want you to see that I mean this seriously. Emily considered this, her gaze softening slightly. I think that would be good, she said. It shows that you care not just about the mistake, but about fixing it. John felt a small wave of relief. The acknowledgement was a first step, but he knew it would take more than sewing the fabric to rebuild complete trust. Still, it was progress, and he recognized that growth often came from small, sincere steps. Over the next hour, John worked carefully on the dress, mending the torn fabric with deliberate attention. Emily watched quietly, occasionally offering small suggestions or comments, but mostly giving him the space to repair it in his own way. The act of mending became symbolic, a bridge between the mistake and the effort to restore trust. As he worked, John reflected further on the morning and what it had taught him. He realized that his impulsive instincts, honed over years of ranch work, needed to be tempered when dealing with people. Awareness, patience, and respect were as important as quick reactions and problem-solving. It was a lesson in humility and empathy, and he felt the weight of it deeply. Emily, meanwhile, observed John's concentration and sincerity. She noticed the care he put into each stitch, the seriousness with which he approached the task, and the quiet humility in his actions. It was clear to her that he had genuinely learned from the incident, and while she was still cautious, she felt a growing respect for his effort. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the dress was repaired. The fabric was mended neatly, stronger in the areas where it had torn, and the process itself had created a space for reflection and understanding between them. Both John and Emily felt the subtle shift, the quiet acknowledgement that mistakes could be addressed with sincerity and care. John handed the dress back to Emily, who inspected it carefully. It looks good, she said, a small smile breaking through. Better than I expected. John returned the smile, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. I'm glad, but more than that, I hope you know that I mean it when I say I'll be careful from now on. Emily nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. I do, and I appreciate that. It shows more than words could. The golden light of the late afternoon bathed the ranch in warmth, and for the first time since the incident, there was a sense of calm and mutual understanding. The lesson of the morning lingered, but it had been transformed from a moment of tension into an opportunity for growth and reflection. John realized that life on the ranch, like life itself, was unpredictable. Mistakes would happen, and even the most careful intentions could go awry. What mattered was the response, the willingness to recognize errors, to learn, and to make amends. It was a lesson he would carry with him, not just for Emily's sake, but for his own growth as a person. Emily, for her part, had learned that people could make mistakes, but still act with integrity. She saw the effort John put into repairing both the physical and emotional impact of his actions, and she felt a cautious optimism that trust could be rebuilt. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the fields, they both stood together in quiet reflection. The incident, though small, had left a mark on their understanding of each other. But it had also opened a door to empathy, respect, and the delicate balance of human interaction. The ranch, ever steady and enduring, continued its rhythm around them, a backdrop to the lessons learned, the boundaries respected, and the care taken to rebuild what had been momentarily shaken. John knew that the afternoon had changed him, and he hoped it had changed Emily's perception of him too, for the better. The evening sun painted the ranch in shades of gold and amber, the long shadows stretching across the fields and turning every familiar object into something magical. After the morning's incident and the afternoon's quiet reflection, John was determined to take concrete steps to make things right with Emily. He understood that apologies and reflections were important, but action, visible and sincere, would speak louder than words. As they stood near the barn, John carefully observed Emily. She was tending to a few supplies she had brought with her, moving deliberately and cautiously, as if still aware of the earlier mishap. Her dress, now mended, looked neat, but the memory of the tear lingered, subtle yet significant. John felt the need to show her that he valued not just her comfort, but her trust. "Emily," John began, his voice calm but sincere, "I want to make sure everything is right. Not just the dress, but how we move forward. I know I need to be more careful, and I want to show that I mean it." Emily looked up at him, her expression curious but cautious. She had seen his sincerity earlier, but words alone could not erase the memory of what had happened. She nodded slowly, signaling that she was willing to hear him out. "I was thinking," John continued, "that we could work together to make sure the rest of the day goes smoothly, and maybe we can fix a few other things around the ranch. It would give us a chance to focus on tasks without distractions and also rebuild a bit of trust." Emily considered this, her eyes thoughtful. "I think that sounds good," she said finally. "I'd like to help, and it might be good for both of us to focus on work." John smiled, feeling a small weight lift from his shoulders. They began moving toward the section of the ranch that needed attention next, a small shed near the edge of the property, where the roof had suffered damage from a recent storm. The structure wasn't critical, but fixing it would prevent further problems and give Emily a sense of accomplishment alongside him. As they worked, John kept his actions deliberate and careful, always aware of Emily's personal space. He instructed her gently, explaining each step before asking her to participate. Emily responded with patience and diligence, her cautious trust slowly growing as she saw John's effort to act respectfully. At one point, they needed to lift a wooden beam together to secure it on the roof of the shed. John held one end and Emily held the other. The beam was light enough for them to manage, but the task required coordination. John made sure to communicate clearly, ensuring that his hands never brushed against hers in an awkward way. "On the count of 3, John said softly. 1, 2, 3. They lifted together, placing the beam carefully in position. Emily stepped back, wiping her hands on her pants, and smiled. "We did it. That wasn't too hard, was it?" John chuckled, feeling a warm sense of pride. "Not at all. You did well. I'm glad we could do this together." The rest of the afternoon passed with similar tasks, repairing a small section of fence, moving hay bales, and organizing tools in the barn. Each activity was deliberate, slow, and thoughtful, with John ensuring that Emily felt safe and valued. Through these shared tasks, the tension from the morning began to fade. Emily's cautious trust gradually returned, replaced by a sense of collaboration and mutual respect. During a short break, they sat on a wooden bench outside the barn, drinking water and watching the sun cast long shadows across the ranch. The sky had turned a soft shade of pink and orange, and the air was cooler, carrying the earthy scent of the fields. John turned to Emily, feeling the need to continue building understanding. "Emily," he said, "I know I can't erase what happened this morning, but I want you to know that I've learned from it. I understand that actions, even well-intentioned ones, can have consequences. And I want to be careful to respect your space and make sure you feel safe here." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "I see that, John, and I appreciate it. It means a lot that you're taking this seriously. I can see that you really are trying." John smiled, feeling a sense of relief. He knew the process of rebuilding trust would take time, but this moment was a step in the right direction. Words alone could not mend the incident, but through careful attention and action, he was beginning to demonstrate his commitment. As they continued their work, John decided to take an extra step. He remembered the small tool shed near the back of the property that had been in disrepair for months. It wasn't urgent, but fixing it would create a tangible symbol of effort and care. He suggested the project to Emily, explaining that it would be a team effort. Emily agreed enthusiastically, clearly eager to contribute. Together, they measured the wood, hammered nails, and replaced broken boards. John was careful to give clear instructions and maintain a respectful distance, making sure Emily felt both involved and safe. Throughout the task, John reflected on his own behavior and the lessons he had learned. He realized that respect was not just about avoiding harm. It was about proactive awareness, anticipating the comfort and safety of others, and acting with empathy. He thought about his father's teachings, which had focused on responsibility and accountability in work, and recognized that these lessons now applied to relationships with people, not just tasks on the ranch. Emily, meanwhile, began to see a change in John's demeanor. He was attentive, deliberate, and patient, demonstrating a new level of awareness she hadn't noticed before. The earlier incident was still in her mind, but the way he handled the rest of the afternoon helped to restore some of her confidence in him. She realized that people could make mistakes but still show genuine effort to correct them. By the time the sun began to dip behind the distant hills, the tool shed was nearly complete. The boards were secured, the roof patched, and the structure looked sturdy and reliable. Both John and Emily stepped back, admiring their work. The satisfaction of accomplishment was tangible, and for the first time since the morning incident, the air between them felt relaxed and positive. "I can't believe how much we got done," Emily said, smiling genuinely. "It looks great. I'm glad we did this together." John nodded, feeling a warm sense of fulfillment. "Me too. You worked hard and I appreciate that. It's good to see the results of our efforts." As the sky turned shades of deep orange and purple, they began to gather their tools and prepare to head back toward the main ranch house. John felt a sense of quiet pride, not just in the work they had accomplished, but in the progress they had made in understanding and respecting each other. The incident with the dress, though small, had been a catalyst for reflection, learning, and growth. On the walk back, John made sure to maintain a calm, considerate presence. He walked slightly behind Emily, giving her space, and occasionally offered gentle guidance when navigating uneven ground. Emily seemed at ease, moving with confidence and a growing sense of trust. As they reached the ranch house, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The air was cooler now, carrying the scent of grass, soil, and evening dew. John paused, looking at the horizon, and felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons of the day. He had learned the importance of empathy, patience, and careful action, and he had seen the impact of his behavior on someone else. More importantly, he had taken tangible steps to address the mistake and show genuine respect. Emily, standing nearby, looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The earlier tension had eased, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and cautious optimism. She could see that John's actions were sincere, and that effort meant more than words alone. The day had been challenging in unexpected ways, but it had also created an opportunity for growth, understanding, and mutual respect. Before heading inside, John spoke again, his voice soft but earnest. "Emily, I want to thank you for your patience, your effort, and for giving me the chance to make things right. It means a lot to me." Emily smiled, her eyes reflecting the first stars in the sky. "Thank you too, John. I can see that you really mean it. That's important." As they entered the ranch house, the warm glow of the evening sun spilling through the windows, both felt a sense of closure for the day's events. The incident that had caused tension in the morning had been addressed through reflection, action, and genuine care. While the lessons of respect and awareness would continue to guide them, the bond of trust had begun to rebuild, one deliberate step at a time. That evening, as John prepared dinner and Emily helped with small chores inside, a sense of calm settled over the ranch. The wind whispered through the trees outside, carrying the quiet sounds of the fields, the cattle, and the rhythm of life that was both challenging and rewarding. For John, the day had been a lesson in humility and responsibility. For Emily, it had been a lesson in patience and understanding. And for both of them, it was a reminder that even small mistakes could become opportunities for growth, learning, and the deepening of trust. The next morning dawned clear and bright over the ranch, the golden light spilling across the fields and warming the earth. Birds sang from the trees, and the soft lowing of cattle punctuated the quiet rhythm of life on the property. After the previous day's events, there was a sense of calm and renewed understanding in the air. John and Emily moved with quiet purpose, each aware of the other, yet comfortable in the shared space they now inhabited. John had taken care to plan the day thoughtfully. There were chores to complete, animals to check on, and small improvements around the ranch that needed attention. Yet, beyond the work itself, John was mindful of how he interacted with Emily. He understood that actions spoke louder than words, and he wanted her to see that his respect and care were consistent, not just occasional gestures. "Emily," he said gently, "I thought we could start with the east pasture today. Some of the fencing there needs inspection, and a couple of posts might need tightening." Emily nodded, slipping on her gloves and adjusting her dress, which had been carefully repaired. She moved with a sense of confidence that had been absent the previous day. There was still a quiet caution, as was natural after the incident, but it was paired now with trust and understanding. As they walked toward the pasture, John reflected on the journey of the last 24 hours. The morning's mishap, the tear in Emily's dress, had been more than a physical accident. It had been a moment that tested boundaries, patience, and awareness. The way they had addressed it, through reflection, careful action, and sincere effort, had transformed the experience from one of discomfort to one of growth and learning. The pasture was peaceful, the grass tall and green, and the cattle grazing calmly. John and Emily worked together efficiently, checking each post, tightening wires, and making sure the fencing was secure. Their movements were deliberate, coordinated without the need for close contact, yet there was a rhythm between them, a silent understanding that made the work feel almost effortless. Emily paused occasionally, brushing sweat from her forehead, and John would offer small words of encouragement. "You're doing well," he said at one point, his voice warm but steady. "This fence looks much better than it did yesterday." Emily smiled, feeling a genuine sense of accomplishment. "I'm glad we're getting it done. It feels good to make progress." The morning passed quickly, each task reinforcing the sense of teamwork and trust that had begun to rebuild. John found himself observing Emily with admiration, noting her patience, attention to detail, and resilience. She had approached the previous day's incident with grace, and her willingness to continue working alongside him showed a maturity and understanding that he deeply respected. By midday, they had completed the inspection and repairs in the east pasture. The fence was strong, the cattle secure, and the land looked well cared for. John felt a sense of quiet pride, not only in the physical work accomplished, but in the progress of their relationship. The tension that had once lingered between them had given way to mutual respect, understanding, and the beginnings of trust. They paused under a large oak tree near the pasture, drinking water and resting. The sun was high, casting soft shadows, and the air carried the faint scent of grass, earth, and hay. John turned to Emily, feeling that this was the right moment to speak about the lessons of the past 2 days. "Emily," he began, his tone calm and reflective, "these last couple of days have taught me a lot. Not just about working on the ranch, but about how important it is to be aware of other people's feelings and boundaries. I've realized that even small actions, if not thought through, can have a big impact." Emily listened carefully, her eyes attentive. She understood the weight of his words, and there was a softness in her expression that reflected both understanding and acceptance. "I also understand," John continued. "That respect is more than just avoiding mistakes. It's about being thoughtful, patient, and careful with how I act around others. I want you to know that I will carry this lesson with me, not just with you, but with everyone I interact with." Emily nodded, a gentle smile forming on her lips. "I can see that, John. I can see the effort you've put in, and it means a lot. It shows that you truly care about how your actions affect others." John felt a quiet warmth in his chest. This acknowledgement, simple as it was, reinforced his determination to act responsibly and with awareness. He realized that personal growth often came from moments of discomfort and reflection, and he was grateful that this incident, though unsettling, had offered such an opportunity. They spent the afternoon completing smaller tasks around the ranch, organizing tools in the barn, checking water troughs, and ensuring that the animals had everything they needed. Each task, no matter how small, became an opportunity to demonstrate care, diligence, and respect. John was conscious of maintaining a balance between guidance and independence, allowing Emily to contribute meaningfully while ensuring her comfort and safety. As the day wore on, the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields. The golden light bathed the ranch in warmth, creating a sense of tranquility that felt almost timeless. John and Emily stood near the barn, observing the land they had worked on together, the fences repaired, and the tools neatly organized. "It's amazing to see how much we've accomplished," Emily said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "I can see the care and effort you put into everything here. It's inspiring." John smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, Emily. I'm glad you see that. It's not just about the work, it's about how we approach it, the thought we put into each action. And I appreciate your help and patience. You've made a real difference." There was a quiet moment of reflection, both of them taking in the beauty of the ranch and the progress they had made. The events of the previous day no longer cast a shadow. Instead, they had become a lesson, a reminder of the importance of empathy, respect, and sincere effort. As evening approached, John decided to prepare a small gesture of appreciation. He suggested that they enjoy a simple meal together outside, using the rustic wooden table near the barn. Emily agreed, and soon they were sitting together, sharing food and conversation, the warm glow of the setting sun creating a serene atmosphere. "This has been a good day," John said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not just because of the work, but because I feel like we've learned something important together." Emily nodded, smiling. "I agree. It's been challenging at times, but also rewarding. I've learned that people can make mistakes and still show that they care through their actions. And I can see that in you, John." John felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. The incident with the dress, the tension, the careful steps to make amends, all of it had led to a moment of genuine understanding and connection. He realized that mistakes, while uncomfortable, could become powerful lessons if met with reflection, accountability, and effort. As darkness settled over the ranch, the first stars appearing in the clear sky, John and Emily cleaned up after their simple meal. The night air was cool and refreshing, carrying the scent of earth, grass, and the distant fields. The ranch, ever steady and enduring, seemed to reflect the lessons of the day, a reminder that life, while unpredictable, offered opportunities for growth, learning, and the rebuilding of trust. Before heading inside, John turned to Emily. "I want to thank you again," he said, his voice earnest, "for your patience, your effort, and for trusting me even after the incident. It means a lot to me, and I hope you can see that my actions today were meant to show that trust is important to me." Emily smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting the soft starlight. "I do see it, John, and I appreciate it. I feel respected and valued, and that makes all the difference." As they entered the ranch house, the warmth of the interior welcomed them. The day had been long and productive, filled with work, reflection, and meaningful interaction. For John, it had been a journey of understanding, growth, and responsibility. For Emily, it had been a lesson in patience, empathy, and recognizing genuine effort. That night, as the ranch settled into its quiet rhythm, both John and Emily felt a sense of closure. The incident with the dress, though small, had been a catalyst for change and learning. It had tested boundaries, patience, and understanding, but through reflection, action, and sincere effort, trust had been rebuilt. John realized that life on the ranch, much like life in general, was unpredictable and full of lessons. Mistakes would happen, and not every action would be perfect. What mattered most was the response, the willingness to reflect, to act responsibly, and to demonstrate care for others. He knew that this lesson would stay with him, guiding his interactions not just with Emily, but with everyone he encountered. Emily, meanwhile, felt a quiet satisfaction. She had seen John's sincere efforts and recognized the growth that had come from a difficult moment. She understood that people were capable of learning from mistakes, and that respect, trust, and empathy were built over time through consistent actions. The experience had strengthened her understanding of patience, human complexity, and the importance of sincere effort in repairing relationships. As the night deepened, and the stars shone brightly over the ranch, both John and Emily settled into their rooms, carrying with them the lessons of the day. The ranch, ever constant and enduring, continued its quiet rhythm outside, a reminder of the stability, responsibility, and care that life required. Though the incident with the dress would remain a memory, it had transformed from a source of tension into a meaningful lesson in empathy, awareness, and the power of sincere action. John and Emily had faced a challenge, navigated it with care, and emerged with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. The night was peaceful, the ranch quiet, and both felt a sense of contentment. Mistakes had been made, lessons learned, and trust rebuilt. Life continued, full of work, learning, and the enduring beauty of the land around them. And in that quiet reflection, both John and Emily knew that the experience had changed them, leaving a lasting impression of respect, understanding, and the importance of thoughtful action.